now begin with the inaugural ceremony. And now I invite our dignitaries for today's function to the dais. Our beloved director and the chief guest of today's event, Dr. Rakesh Agarwal, Medical Superintendent, Dr. Ashok Chandra Pade, Dr. D.K. Subramaniam, Professor and Head, Department of Medicine and Division of Geriatric Medicine, JIPMER. May I request Dr. Sunil K. Narayan, Senior Professor, and Dr. Vaibhav Godlekar, Head of the Department, to kindly escort the dignitaries and occupy the dais around.
As a part of our tradition, we at Jitman start every auspicious event with the invocation of Lord Dhanvantari.
धन्वन्तरी स भगवानमृतत्वदाता यो वैद्यकस्य गुरुरादिरनादिकालात् यो हार्तदेगमन आत्मसुखावहस्य नैरोग्यतस्य निदरां च नृणां हितस्य तस्यारणास्पदमहर्षिवरस्य शिष्य ये त्रेवयं प्रमुदिताननुभाग्यवन्तः देन प्रतीबितचरं सुचिरात् शुभायुः वेदस्य दीपामिह तत्पुरदोतरामः येन प्रभां वयमिहस्य विदद्य दिक्षु ज्योत्स्नां रुजातिशमनी प्रभवेम दातुं व्यादिव्यकात हृदयाय इमानवाय देयं द्वितम्बुविकलापि च न किलैषः देयं द्वितम्बुविकलापि च न किलैषः देयं द्वितम्बुविकलापि च न किलैषः.
I now request Dr. Vaibhav Godlekar, Head of the Department Neurology, to deliver the welcome address.
A very good morning to all. It's an honor to be standing here on this dais on the behalf of Department of Neurology and to give this welcome address. We have all assembled here on the occasion of the World Stroke Day. As well known to us, all of us, stroke is a devastating emergency that affects many. It is equally important to remember that these patients are also left with severe deficits which need a long-term rehabilitative measures. The day ahead will underline this fact as we hear today's talk and inaugurate the India Regulatory Balance System. With this, I first welcome our beloved director, Dr. Agarwal sir. He is an avid researcher and a great administrator. On the top of this, he is a remarkable teacher and statistician. In fact, one of his enhanced workshops which he conducted in Sanjay Gandhi rekindled my interest in mathematics and changed the way I look towards the research. I thank him for that excellent experience in the teaching, one of my best in my career. Thank you, sir. I welcome you, sir. A good administrator is one who is approachable and facilitates the growth of institute. We are lucky to have Dr. Ashok Pade sir with us, under whom the Jipmer has seen great growth. I welcome you, sir. We are honored to have Dr. Ravindra sir doing research who has come here and grace this occasion. We welcome you, sir. We welcome Dr. D.K. Subramaniam sir in the Department of the Medicine. And your department has played a pivotal role in the management of present COVID pandemic. Without it, that is impossible. It has all single-handedly coordinated and led to a war against this crisis. It has helped in the war against this crisis. We thank you. With this, I welcome also, although he is not present, I welcome Dr. Ashok who will be speaking on the stroke and relative measures later in the day and enlighten us. I welcome Nursing Superintendent and her team here who has made this occasion. I see the faculty, Dr. Nagaran sir has come here and I thank you for coming, sir. I welcome all the faculty who will be joining us today. I welcome all the participants on this occasion. And I hope we will be doing a good work in the school. Thank you.
I invite Dr. Sunil K. Narayan, Professor Sinensky, and faculty in charge of comprehensive software program to give the introductory speech.
Very good morning to one and all. At the outset, let me express my most sincere gratitude to our beloved Director, Medical Superintendent, Dean Research, and also the Professor of head of the department, to the Department of Medicine, also in charge of geriatric medicine, also D.K. Subramanian, the medicine superintendent, and also the other supporting departments, which are very important in providing a very good stroke care service in any institution. We have had the support of the Department of Discrimination and Rehabilitation, departments of ENT to the speech therapy, the diabetic sections, and also the psychiatry department. We providing the medical social worker, medical social service department to provide all that support. So thank you all at the outset. Radio Guidance, Marriage, thank you for coming over. The department support is, as you know, very vital. World Stroke Day was for the first time announced on the date of 29th of October in 2004 in Vancouver by Vladimir Kaczynski, who was based in Canada. Previously, we had a situation where stroke was mainly treated by physicians and often by cardiologists, and neurologists also were taking kind of a back foot in seriously treating stroke. So what helped was the decade of the year in 1990 to 2000, when due to the general momentum in the neurological services and academics and the interest in the brain all over the world, we also, a lot of young neurologists also found that it's not just treating the blood vessels, but taking care of the brain after that any damage is suffered, or protecting the brain plays a very important role in the treatment of stroke. So this led to a lot of enthusiasm and focus in treating stroke, and we had two major breakthroughs in the 1990s with the 1996 the thrombolytic therapy in acute ischemic stroke coming up successfully through clinical trials, and also the endarterectomy and carotid stenting becoming established as a treatment in secondary stroke prevention. Though there was a lot of problems from in 2004, Kaczynski, because of his close association with the American president, for whom he was a chief neurologist, found out that even the administrators have to be evaluated so that they take care of the nation very well. And he had a, using that association, that closeness with the president, he could do a great deal of advocacy and push the support and the focus on stroke diseases and the need to prevent it. A lot of neurologists and neurologists then started taking up stroke as a special career in their lives. There was a lot of problem initially. People thought that because the brain cells are permanent, we can't do much for stroke. But then we also realized that brain has this remarkable plasticity, and by various stimulation, either endogenous or exogenous, the brain can quickly learn to reinvent itself to provide a good functional outputs even after it sustains injuries. So the rehabilitation also started taking a major lead, and various, apart from traditional physiotherapy, various neuromodulating techniques, therapies like stem cell therapy, all started getting into active research, and they've shown very degrees of success. But we need to have these protocols better delineated and better defined. And so this is one of the major challenges for neurologists now. So the best outcomes can be produced using these various techniques. The World Stroke Day in 2020, its theme is join the movement. We need a collective strategy to improve the stroke care, which is far from ideal at the moment. There was a time until in the 1990s also, a major part of the public, even in developed countries, thought that stroke is a disease of the heart, it's some kind of a heart attack. And people did not know how to recognize stroke and to go to a stroke care services. And now with effective treatment available, effective preventive strategies available, we need to take the message to the periphery that every citizen recognizes earliest symptoms of stroke so that immediately he can seek help and he can be directed to a stroke ready center. So stroke ready centers are developing as a part of this advocacy and campaign all over the world. At the district level, there is the plan of Government of India also. And we have had excellent deliberations in the ministry also last year. In 2019, the DGHS brought out these Indian guidelines with aim to provide CT scans at every district hospitals, early diagnosis, and in fact provide basic stroke care, including thrombolysis at the district hospital levels itself. So, and it's also important that once somebody has had a stroke, we have to do the best of rehabilitation support for them. For this, various neuro rehabilitation devices have been available and it's very happy that in this at this point of time, due also to the support of our administration, mainly due to the support of the administration and also the support of the our industry colleagues, people installed the equipment well before 1 week before the World Stroke Day, and we'll be happy to demonstrate these items to any of you interested to come in small numbers in the neurobionics laboratory. These equipments even have been studied and have been found to be useful. The first equipment, the treadmill with weight suspension, can be helpful in people who have already started being on their legs to improve their gait faster and to get back to work faster. The balance system is useful in all sort of balance disorders, cerebellar, peripheral neuropathies, and here also we have shown definite improvement in this, but it is very clear the Cochrane reviews for both these equipments have shown that better techniques, better fine-tuning of all the parameters have to be researched to find out how best these can be utilized for the best outcomes. So we will be not only providing the service but also working into these areas. In neurology department, we actually started we got into stroke unit in 2000 and 2009. We did the first thrombolysis in 2009. We started getting different neuro rehabilitation and neurobionic equipment in the subsequent years. There are robotics therapy. There is also neuromodulatory techniques like TDCS and TMS, that is brain stimulation with the direct current stimulation and transcranial magnetic stimulation. So we are actually one of the best equipped centers as far as the neurorehabilitatory care within the neurological service system compared to any other part of any other institution in the country. So we have to best exploit these facilities. Best we have to provide maximum service to people and have to work towards refining these so that we come out with the better techniques than what is available in the world now. Our MS in neurotechnology and PhD programs are helping towards this, and with the help of the administration and the enthusiastic faculty and the support of the other departments, we certainly be able to improve these techniques with best output from our institution. There is only one area where we have still lagging behind a bit, that is providing mechanical thrombectomy. This is part of the standard stroke there, and I understand that we are soon going to have a biplane DSA also, after which we should be able to provide mechanical thrombectomy also for patients. Now the window time is increased up to 24 hours, so certainly our patients deserve this, and this will be will be commissioned, will be purchased and commissioned. Purchase procedure is already, the process will be completed very soon, I believe. I want to thank the administration in providing all the support in also in starting course like stroke postdoctoral fellowship this year, and with the equipments and the courses and some of the external research grants, and also support from our own internal grants. We are actually in a very good position now to provide good quality services as well as research. It's our duty and responsibility, and we have to rise to the occasion, provide the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for inviting us with the advances in the development, the stroke management and care. I now request our esteemed medical superintendent, Dr. Ashok Shankar Bade, sir, to felicitate the function.
Good morning to respected director, Dr. Rakesh Agarwal, Professor Subramanian, my colleague, medicine professor in the department, Dr. Sunil Raman, professor of neurology, Dr. Vaibhav from the department of neurology, Dr. Ravindran, professor and head of pharmacology and dean research, Dr. Nagaraj, professor of radiodiagnosis, other faculties of neurology and other departments, CMO and other nursing staff who have come here, and the technicians and the residents and the other staff who come here in this function. First of all, let me thank the Department of Neurology for inviting me for this twin function. I am very, very happy to be involved in this twin function, because first is the function that is the observation of the World Stroke Day, which is very, very important. As already mentioned, World Stroke Day is being celebrated on 29th October every year. And the theme of the present year is very, very important. So I just would like to tell something about the present theme. The present theme is to increase the awareness of stroke. Mainly, the emphasis is on prevention, because 60 to 70% of the strokes can be prevented. So, main theme is of this year is join the movement to prevent the stroke, and there are various strategies that we have to utilize to prevent the stroke. It's not that after the stroke is occurred, the other services are not required. But you can just imagine if the full load comes to you, like all the 100% people have stroke, then we will be not be able to deliver any goods to the patient. And as you all are aware, that prevention is better and easier and simpler than cure. For curing or treating, we need all those gadgets which we are going to inaugurate today. Plus, the also involves a lot of dependence on the human resources. So human resources are very difficult now. So, and the recovery after stroke is not very simple, not easy. Some of the patients may not recover completely also. So maybe sometimes what happens is the only earning member of the family has a stroke and the whole family suffers because of that. So I think all our emphasis should be on prevention. So more focus should be on prevention, and there are various factors that are controllable. Of course, there are some factors which we cannot control, that is gender, age, is chronological age we may not be able to control, but physical age definitely we can control, and the family history. So these factors we cannot control, but there are other controllable factors which are there within the reach of every individual, need not be a neurologist or a physician. Every individual can think about this, and that is why the World Stroke Day it emphasizes this year's theme. That prevention all the time we are talking about prevention, and there are various methods with which we definitely will be able to prevent or delay this stroke. You must remember that now the for people who are sitting here, out of this, 1 out of 4 is having a high risk of developing a stroke sometime in the life. So to reduce that, what we have to do is we have to change our lifestyle. Changing lifestyle, it is very easy to say, but if you really want to do it, definitely it can be done. And the first and the most important thing is the physical activity. You must remember that every now and then what we do is, the moment we say exercise or physical activity, a lot of people are telling, okay, I don't have time to do physical exercise, it is not like that. But if you want to live a stroke-free life, physical activity is one of the most important things, and all of us must do that and must encourage the others who are around us, either our patients or our family members or our relatives or friends. We must encourage people to do physical activity in any form. It is not only one form of physical activity is important, but physical activity and consuming calories regularly, at least 5 times a week. You must do physical activity for 45 to 50 minutes every day. Like every 5 days, definitely we have to spend that time. Then only we will be able to prevent the stroke. Other factors that are also we can control is avoid smoking. Smoking is one of the most important causes of stroke. It also affects not only the brain but heart and other organs also. So you remember that avoid smoking. Luckily in our campus we have following most of the times we do like this is a non-smoking area. So when I joined here in 1983, it was not so. So I used to see a lot of people smoking in the campus. Some of them used to still smoke even in the changing room of the operation theaters. But now it has drastically come down. So one thing is there that definitely we can control is stop smoking. Another thing that also can be controlled is excessive alcohol intake. Lot of cultures they have in the parties like the alcohol they take, but excessive consumption of alcohol without a proper diet definitely increases the risk. So one must avoid all this. Then have healthy food. Like it is said that fish is better than the red meat. So definitely we can, I'm not against any veg or non-veg or fish eating or meat eating people, but it has been proved that fish eating reduces the chances of a stroke more as compared to eating red meat. Of course, the vegetarians that we are lucky, but there are some other factors in vegetarian people who are vegetarians that may also cause the stroke. Like lot of ghee, lot of oils. So that also has to be avoided. So this is one factor. Then other thing is the other diseases which are there, like obesity, diabetes, hypertension. You must keep in control. This will help us to reduce the incidence of stroke. So, and these are all controllable. It is not that we cannot control the diabetes. I have seen people with diabetes leading a very healthy life at the age of 80 also, doing all the activities. Similar is the case of hypertension. But obesity, definitely it is difficult to live beyond a certain age if you don't reduce the obesity. So all of us should make an effort to encourage people and to make aware. That is the purpose of this World Stroke Day. That you have to make everybody aware that these are controllable factors, and this we can reduce. This, if you follow, we can reduce the incidence of a stroke in all. So I hope the Department of Neurology will take a lead in this to spread the awareness by various means, like distributing pamphlets to their patients, by having some programs for the patients who come there and for the other faculties and the other residents, so that they can emphasize it, so that what we will have is the incidence of stroke will be coming down, and then definitely whatever resources we have, we will be able to utilize them better for the people who suffer stroke, unfortunately, and we will be able to rehabilitate them very well. Another thing I just want to tell now is what has come new in this world. I'm not talking about Corona only. One is digital addiction or digital intoxication. That is what the term is used as, digital intoxication. And this has become worse during this pandemic of Corona. You must remember that the more time you spend on the screen media, with the screen media, with whatever, either your cell phones or the computers or TV and all that, any excess time you are going to spend, that is going to increase the risk of a developing stroke. So you must remember, there are studies which have shown that every hour, beyond 2 hours, if you spend in front of the digital screen, your chances of increasing the stroke, risk of increasing the stroke is 20% per hour. So you can just imagine that every day if you are going to watch more than 20% or going to interact with the digital screen for more than 2 hours, you are going to increase. So we have to now devise methods how we can do that. Of course, in the present situation, we have to engage in the digital screen, but we have to keep in mind that we can still do exercise, maybe not continuously watching or getting ourselves engaged with the digital screen. We can do a lot of activities every half an hour, every 1 hour, you get up, move around, do, and maybe you can do more exercise so that you can avoid the problems of digital intoxication. This is very, very important that we must keep in mind. It has already been said that the digital screening time inversely affects the life expectancy. So that is what we have to keep in mind, and we have to spread this message. The main purpose of this observing the World Stroke Day is what? Not only treating the patients, but to spread the awareness that these are the factors which can cause or which are responsible or which, because of which you become a high risk to develop a stroke, and that are all preventable and that can be treated. Of course, the treatment part definitely is very important once the patient develops a stroke. So you have to see that as early as possible, the patient should reach the hospital and the treatment should start, say, something like golden time or golden period, that is less than 6 hours. Now they are telling that it has been reduced further also. So that definitely, so the Department of Neurology will have to take active lead in that. They cannot just like have a treadmill and the balance system so that they can treat this patient. But immediate action has to be taken, and I hope the Department of Neurology will rise to this occasion and help these people when they come. Of course, it will definitely need the support of the Administration, definitely the administration will support them in this endeavor, but they will have to put in more effort for both the methods. One is spreading the awareness and preventing stroke, and second is the treatment of the stroke at the earliest, and pursue the people to follow the post-operative, post-stroke rehabilitation program, because it is also very difficult to come every day to do the treadmill here. It may not be feasible for some people, but then some initial days you will have to do, they will have to come here and do it. Later on, maybe you can train them, they can have it at their nearby home or in the home nearby their staying place. So definitely the Department of Neurology has a lot of work to do in this. And I hope under the headship of Dr. Vaibhav and the other people in the department and the other nursing staff and the other staff, they will be able to raise to the occasion. And I am very happy that the Department of Neurology has got these two state-of-art equipments which will help them to take care of the patients post-stroke so that the patients develop a proper gait and they are able to do the exercise and recover at the earliest. With this, I again congratulate the Department of Neurology for getting this equipment. And I am also happy that they have brought up this program, that is observation of the World Stroke Day, so that we can focus on this aspect that World Stroke can be prevented in a maximum number of times. So these viewers, I thank all of you for giving me this time and listening to me very peaceful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those inspiring words. I hope you all are now better aware of the risk factors and the preventive strategies of the stroke, and we all will help with the spread of the awareness of the stroke causes and the preventive strategies. Thank you, sir, again for being the pillar of support to the Department of Neurology.
Department of Medicine and Division of Pediatric Medicine has been always the backbone and support system for the stroke treatment program. May I now request Dr. D.K. Subramaniam, Professor and Head Department of Medicine and Division of Pediatric Medicine, to address the function.
Good morning, everyone. Respected Director of RKC, respected President of the day, my dear colleagues and friends, Sunil and Vaibhav, and others who have here, assembly, nurses, very important in the day of stroke. I'm sure there are friends from rehabilitation services also. They are also equally important, if not more important. Because, as you already heard, it's the integrated care. A single person cannot serve everyone disease. What is very important actually, this team that connects, that will connect to the patient is compassion. Somehow, this emotion has really waned over time. We have become very mechanical. Partly because of the nature of the illness, but also because of other reasons. Now, I would like to share a few thoughts on stroke, the past, present, the future. A lot to say already about the advancements. Past and newer postgraduates and the junior consultants is a hopeless situation. Very impossible situation, to the extent that hardly had any drive to do something which is different and improve the condition. That is in the 1980s and the 90s. Today, there is hope. We have reached the stage of hope. Because our transformation is actually as vital, pulmonary therapy, mechanical thrombectomy, other rehabilitation. Yet, what is stroke for us in the future? For these patients, I think it's very bright. The day is not far off when we will be able to achieve near functional normality. a near normal function. I'm quite convinced that that will be possible. And why is that being possible? Because there are people who are thinking about the impossible, who challenge these boundaries. And that's why we have so much advancement. Significant brain machine interface. Advances in rehabilitation equipment. Neuroplasticity, proximal confidence. Fantastic concept. And I'm sure these will play a big role in the coming future to bring near normal function. Whoever thought that when the COVID-19 pandemic broke, that the test result, which was taking initially days, will be available in hours, and now in minutes. By the time this war is over, the report is in the hand. So these people who challenge this word impossible. This word impossible is very time-bound. It dies a natural death because of these people. Actually, these people don't see the word impossible as impossible. They see it as impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your support and explanation.
To mark this auspicious day, we will now proceed for the land typing ceremony. Now I request our director, Dr. Rakesh Agarwal, sir, to kindly inaugurate today's World Stroke Day function, dedicating the two newly commissioned mural reality equipments towards the service of the public by unveiling the inaugural plaque and the release of the version of protocols. Invite our Reserve Director, Dr. Rakesh Agarwal, sir, to deliver the inaugural address.
Colleagues on the dais, Professor Bade, Professor Subramaniam, Professor Sunil Narayan, Dr. Vaibhav, Professor Ravindran, Dr. Pradeep Nair, who I believe had to be away at a sudden notice for another important activity, Dr. Rajeshwari, other members of the Department of Neurology, and other members of the institute staff, including nurses, technicians, students, residents, and others. Also, Dr. Abhishek Srivastava, I don't know whether he's on the connected on the video conference already or not, and those who are joining us on the video conference. So, Professor Bade referred to the nature of this function as a twin function. There is another twin in the room, and that's the similarity of thoughts between Professor Bade and me. He's said exactly a lot of what I wanted to say. In my interpretation also, the theme of this year's World Stroke Day, join the movement, is not directed at us, the healthcare professionals, but it is directed at the society at large, the whole world's population, that they should join the movement. The care of a disease can be looked upon and is looked upon by public health professionals as a series of steps. And they don't look at it as treatment and prevention separately. They look at everything as prevention. Primary prevention, to prevent a disease from happening. Secondary prevention, if a disease does occur, to make it less severe. And third, tertiary prevention. After the disease has occurred, you have tried to make it less severe, but you have to live with it, to modify, to ameliorate the consequences, and making it less painful, more easy to live with the disease and its consequences after the disease has had its course. So we have two functions today. We have one to celebrate the World Stroke Day, and the second is to inaugurate these equipments. These equipments touch a very small part of our armamentarium against stroke, and that is after a person has had stroke, we have done thrombolytic therapy, whatever therapy we have done.
A lot of people would also have spontaneous recovery, and then in a limited few, we use this equipment to try to ameliorate the effect. So to me, that's a much less important function. But that happens to be the function that we super specialists, the same is true for gastroenterology, we believe much more in treating cirrhosis rather than trying to stop people from taking alcohol or having viral infection. The same happens in each specialty. But I don't think that's the main message. The main message of the day should be to prevent stroke. A lot of us, it was said earlier that, Dr. Sunil Narayan said that the heart specialists used to treat stroke because it was looked upon as a heart disease. Professor Bade referred to it. But there is a big difference between stroke and heart attack. The two diseases have very similar risk factors, have very similar etiopathogenesis in many regards. But there is one difference. If I have to choose between the two, I would rather have a heart attack rather than have a stroke. A heart attack kills, whereas a stroke cripples. And sometimes cripples you in such ways that you can't even imagine. You are fully functional, but you can't speak, you can't communicate, and that makes life miserable. So the best thing is prevention, as was emphasized earlier, and I would try to re-emphasize that by using 5 letters of the English alphabet: A, B, C, D, and E. And let me start with the last one. E stands for exercise. If we look around ourselves within our campus, the frequency of obesity and overweight is extremely high. That is in a country where we are thought that we are poor, we eat less, we have less availability of food. In the last 30-40 years, we have had a lot of prosperity. For those in the institute, salaries have gone up, and that has meant that there is a pandemic of overweight and obesity. That pandemic is killing many more people than the pandemic that we are talking about all the time today has killed. And we really, really need to do something about it. We need to encourage our staff members to exercise more. Unfortunately, for the size of our campus, the number of people who live in the campus, if you go out in the morning or in the evening, number of people who engage in physical activity, number of people who walk around is extremely small. And we really need to change this. Leave aside those of our age, even students, one finds that the physical activity has really come down, and Dr. Bade referred to addiction to devices, screen devices, and that is something that we really need to work on. D stands for 2 things. One is diet, and the other is diabetes control. Stroke has a very close relationship with diabetes, so we need to detect diabetes early, we need to control diabetes. Extremely easy. The best thing possibly is to have one's blood sugar tested after the age of 40 every 5 years or so. That's all that we need. And once detected, we need to get treatment. And a part of treatment has already been covered in what we refer to in E, exercise. If we maintain our body weight normal, and if we exercise, diabetes automatically comes under control, at least partially. C refers to cessation of smoking. B refers to blood pressure control. Again, the most important thing possibly for stroke control is, now that smoking has already reduced much, is to have one's blood pressure checked every 5 years, and if it is found to be high, to take drugs, to take other lifestyle measures and bring the blood pressure under control. And that will affect both thrombotic as well as hemorrhagic strokes, both will be reduced, and that's extremely important. And finally, A, possibly the least important of the 5 primary preventive measures, and that is anti-aggregative therapy. Taking antiplatelet agents such as aspirin or another one, or anticoagulants where they are indicated, And that is actually a much bigger role in people who have a basic underlying disease, which is putting them at the risk of stroke. So people who have atrial fibrillation or other such conditions. So to me, it is this E, D, C, and B, which are the mantra for dealing with stroke. And we, even though we are super specialists, we somehow think of patient who has come to us with stroke, not of a person who is at risk of stroke, but that is where we can derive the maximum dividend, and that's actually also the cheapest measure of dealing with stroke. By the time a person comes to you, yes, we can save some of them, but that treatment is extremely costly. The incremental cost effectiveness ratio, the amount of money spent for one quality adjusted life year that we give them after a person comes with stroke is much higher compared to what we need to spend if we do prevention. And the other part of prevention is, it's like a polyvalent vaccine. One vaccine that protects against multiple diseases. All these measures protect us not only against stroke, but heart attack, cancers, against fatty liver and cryptogenic cirrhosis, and many other diseases. And that's the best part of it. The only thing that is said is, but lifestyle change, there is one problem. It is difficult. It depends how you look at it. Each glass of water can be looked upon as it is half full, it is half empty. The way I look at lifestyle change is, it is not difficult. One knows of any number of people who lost weight, any number of people who have increased their activity, any number of people who have stopped smoking, any number of people who have got their blood pressure and diabetes. The unfortunate part that I find is, I had a colleague who stopped smoking. We have been telling him for years to stop, he did not, and one day he had a viral infarction and next day it was gone. If we can do it after an event occurs, why can't we do it earlier? It basically needs only one step, a resolution in one's brain. Of course, it needs people around to push you. That sometimes helps keep a resolution, and I think if we have to join the movement of what World Stroke Day 2020 asks us to do, it is to join the movement in ensuring that all these things happen for us, for our family members, our colleagues, our dear ones, those that we care about. And of course, that group for us includes our patients, and therefore we need to encourage each patient, not a patient who comes to us for stroke, but anybody who walks into our institution, to follow those simple steps. With that, let me congratulate again the department for their efforts to improve the facilities for stroke. And I have only one small message there. And that is in relation to window period. We will keep hearing different people saying window period is 6 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours, 24 hours. The only message I want to give in relation to that is that window period is not a fixed thing. And within the window period, different timings have different impact. You may say window period is 6 hours, but again, if you act within the first 2 hours, the effect is going to be more than it is going to be in the 6th hour. And it is not that in the 7th hour there is no effect. It's a continuum. Unfortunately, we in medicine try to dichotomize everything before and after, which it is not. So again, even though whatever the period of window period that might be mentioned in books, in journal articles, we really need to cut the time between the event and our intervention to as short as possible, disregarding the cutoffs that are mentioned. With that, once again, congratulations to the department for embarking on this journey of helping patients with stroke in different manners by doing interventions and through these physiotherapy steps that we are going to take with the two new equipment today. And I'm sure you would have reached a much better place in another 2 or 3 years than where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those inspiring words. I reckon we all should pledge to inculcate ABCD, what sir has told in our lifestyle. Thank you, sir, again for gracing the occasion.
I invite the postdoctoral fellow in stroke, Dr. Anis, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Respected dignitaries, honored of the dais, guest faculty, dear teachers, colleagues, and friends. I have been given the pleasant opportunity to express my vote of thanks. First and foremost, I express my earnest gratitude to our beloved director, who has always been a source of inspiration to both students and faculty alike. His wisdom and management skills has guided our institution through this difficult COVID times. Today, he has taken up his precious time to be with us and to grace the occasion. We thank you, sir. Dr. Ashar Bade, Medical Superintendent, has been a diligent and compassionate administrator that we have seen. He has played an equal role during this challenging COVID times as well as in the pre-COVID times. He has been a strong pillar of support for our department. We thank you, sir, and we thank you for your strong emphasis on the preventive aspects of stroke as well as the spreading awareness of this very important topic. We are also fortunate to have Dr. D.K. Subramanian, Head of the Department of Medicine, to grace the occasion. He has supported the stroke program from the beginning. We work with him very closely with the care of geriatric patients. We thank you, sir, for being here with us. In a few minutes, we will be joined by Dr. Abhishek Srivastava, today's guest speaker, who will be sharing from his immense knowledge regarding the in the rapidly evolving field of stroke rehabilitation. I also thank the Dean Academy, Dr. Pankaj Kindra, in his absence, who has always a great support for all our academic programs. Also thanks is expressed to Dr. Dean Research, Dr. Ravindran, for his support of all research activities of the stroke division. I also extend my heartiest gratitude to HOD Neurology, Dr. Vaibhav, for his full support. Thanking Dr. Sulnarayan support to us, but he began the stroke services and has arranged for today's program. We also express our sincere thanks to the Chief Nursing Officer, the Deputy Nursing Superintendent from SSB, as well as the nursing in charge of stroke ICU, and other hardworking, dedicated nursing staff who has always been with us in the support of stroke patients. We also thank the Department of Telemedicine, Dr. Professor Chitoria, as well as Dr. Kalayasan and the technical team for overseeing today's audiovisual aspects. Also, I thank the head of the department and faculty of radiodiagnosis department as well as emergency medical services for their support, their lend to stroke services. I also thank the health technology team and the engineers from Hospital Medica who has installed the treadmill and balance equipment well in time for today's events. I also thank all the faculty and the residents of the neurology department for their cooperation. I may have missed a lot of people, but it's not intentional. I thank everyone for being with us today for this function. Thank you.
Thank you. I request you all kindly praise for the national anthem.
to introduce the guest speaker of the day, Dr. Abhishek Srivastava. I welcome you, sir.
Good morning, friends at NIMHANS. Thank you, Professor Narayan, for the invitation. Good to see my old friends GK from NIMHANS there and Naveen from Jaipur being there. Good to see you after a long time. I have fond memories of Jaipur doing a GATE course a couple of years, 5 years back. So let's start the topic. I'll be speaking on advances in post-stroke motor rehab primarily. So we talk about stroke deficits, neuroplasticity concept, when to mobilize, what approaches to use to mobilize those patients, and what is the evidence. We'll not talk about pharmacotherapy, brain stimulation, and the new technology coming in for that. What does stroke means? For a patient at the end of the road, for family at the beginning of burden, for us physicians, the interventions, for the organization, is investment, and for nation, is loss of disability light years, which means people suffer because of stroke. Always remember, no two strokes are alike, and no two stroke patient react similarly to these situations. So if you have same MRI, the outcome can be different. Stroke can cause multiple impairments: cognition, behavior, vision, speech, language, swallow, movement, tone problems, paralysis, sensory issues, and incontinence. So our job in rehab is to identify all these impairments in detail and treat them with our team to prevent a disability to happen. If you don't do proper treatment, we will have disabilities in mobility, in self-care, cognition, communication, and bladder problems. And remember, the main issues are the attitude, not the people functions per se. So some fact sheet: stroke is a major cause of locomotor disability in adults. Only 1/3 of stroke survivors ambulate in the community to be functional, and supervised training in chronic stroke survivors can improve the outcome. We show the evidence for that. And the most potent intervention to improve mobility in stroke patients is task-oriented practice. So you can do something called as repetitive task-specific training. You can make a person walk, he will be able to walk in long term. So the issue is how to change the brain. Is it possible? It is possible. We'll see how. Some concepts of plasticity have in 1949 first says that some changes in the brain can occur. You can see a cortical map of a primate where you can see a lot of changes in the dorsal prefrontal cortex, which can take over the motor function after a stroke in a primate, which means brain can change. It is our job to make that change in the brain. So again, basic facts. Recoveries of two types. A spontaneous recovery happens in first 3 to 6 months, injury settles down. We can modify this by rehab interventions. Second is functional recovery, which is unlimited. There's no time for functional recovery. It is primarily based on plasticity and training, primarily based on rehab. Same way, rehab is of two types: a compensatory rehab or a remediational rehab, which means if someone can walk, we give him a stick, it is compensation, very well recognized. Second is remediational rehab. Can we restore function by reducing the impairment? Can you improve the motor power? Can you reduce the spasticity? Person can walk better. This is what we can do with help of newer technology and good training concepts. Again, Warden Cohen has shown with a simple cartoon, we can recover motor function by 5 ways. First, we can do something in the injured cortex with medications. Second, we can do RTMS on the opposite motor cortex to reduce the inhibition it offers. We can do RTMS or TDCS for the supplementary motor area. Dr. Narayan does a lot of good work on that. We can do therapy on the injured extremity, on the involved extremity by therapy, robotics, balance systems, gait systems. Last is to constrain the opposite extremity called as CIMT. So whatever we do in rehab comes in these 5 specific subdomains. And the most critical component is practice task-specific training. God has made hand to work, not to exercise. God has made legs to walk, not to exercise. So you can make a person walk and make him use his hands, that will form new circuits in the brain, that will get new motor or functional recovery in long term. Again, some more point, very important thing to understand how these systems work. We all know in acute stage, something called as penumbra. Some part of the brain is partially damaged. Neurology colleagues will thrombolize it or remove the clot, or surgeon will remove the whole hematoma from there to reperfuse the brain. We can start some drugs now very, very early, which can help motor as well as language recovery. And what happens in first few months is very, very important. Brain recruit additional areas to perform new function, that's called as compensation. Other part of brain takes over function, that's called as reorganization. This ability of brain to compensate for lesions is called as neuroplasticity. So whatever we do in rehab is to trigger that plasticity. And we can trigger it by two ways: by intensive training, called as task-specific training, also called as experience-dependent plasticity, or by newer biological treatments like pharmacological agents, RTMS, and TDCS. Today we'll talk primarily about the intensive training, how it can help to improve locomotor outcome in primarily stroke patients. Especially in language areas, some part of uninjured hemisphere takes over function, especially for language representation. That is called as homologous area adaptation. Doesn't work well for motor concepts of language. The right brain can take over function over a long period of time. So first thing we see a patient in the stroke unit, should you mobilize patient or not? There are nice guidelines available to when to mobilize, not to mobilize, sit out only. So if BP is very high or very low, GC is less than 8, SpO2 94, heart rate very low or very high, bad neglect, not to mobilize. There are nice guidelines available. If they can toilet sitting at the edge of the bed, proper head control, drowsy, not unconscious, can you wait to sit out, and so on, but the guidelines are available. But the most important point is to make them stand as soon as possible. You can do in the ICU also. We can stand in after 24 hours. Simple tilt table. We all know that. This is an Erigo system where you have a FES inbuilt in the tilt table, which will prevent postural drops. You can stand even day 2 without any postural hypertension in your ICUs also. You can make them stand. The most important concept is therapy. Nothing can replace therapy. People will learn skill only in therapy. There are multiple approaches. We all know about that. What we can do beyond conventional therapy, we talked today about that. So remember, if you don't use your hand or legs, it will cause learn non-use. It will cause worsening of the impairment. So we can use multiple approaches now, these 10 approaches, which can improve locomotor outcome in these stroke patients. I think we have got the first two systems, the body weight unweight system and the balance system. But there are multiple others. We talk about these two in detail, others in short. This is a unweighing system called as body weight support system. You can use it over a treadmill or you can use it on the ground. The concept began in 1982. Edgerton et al. Were the first to use this concept in cats, especially in spinal cats. So what they did a D6 level transaction of cord in cats and made them walk in the lab in a treadmill. And what they saw, 50% of cats learn to walk on the ground. Why? Because there's something called as central pattern generator, CPG, in dorsal cord, by which we are able to walk. The intensive training on the cats, they were able to make those cats walk. Then in the early 90s, especially in spinal cord injury, this thing came into the literature and many studies happened in complete and incomplete spinal cord injury. But the Cochrane review says that in humans with intensive locomotor pattern training, they were unable to generate walking in humans. Then in late 90s, Vicentin did the first trial in stroke patients, where they have shown that if you use an unweighing system, so you can offload the body weight, put a person on a treadmill, and therapists put the step forward and because there's no power, you can generate a walking pattern, especially in stroke patients. That led to a lot of studies in late 90s and 2000s, where they have shown to be used in acute patients and chronic patients. We did a study. This is the guy. This guy is Gary Colombo. This real picture, 1993. He was doing his PhD those days in Austria. And this is a spinal cord patient. You can see a body weight support harness being walked on a treadmill. This guy ultimately developed a robotic system. It's called as Locomat, most common system available right now. The concept started in a bit early 90s. We did a study in our Niemann days, this last old study, published 2015, where we have used same concept, body weight training, to improve gait in chronic stroke survivors. Those patients who were suffered until a stroke, more than 3 months duration, who were trained 20 sessions, 5 days a week for 4 weeks. What we wanted to know is that does this gait training with other body weight support improve gait in these chronic stroke patients? And second, does this effect last over the 3 months or not? So this group had study had 3 groups. Group 1 only had patients who got conventional physical therapy. Group 2 had patients who were on the treadmill with a body weight support system, but no body weight was offloaded. It was a sham group. And third was a group where they were walking on a treadmill with a weighing system with the body weight support offloading. So what we saw, this is a study details concept diagram. I took about 45 patients, and you can see the 3 groups, 1, 2, and 3, conventional training group, treadmill training group, body weight training group. You can see the parameters, age, gender, all were properly matched. And then this is the results of group 1. We took 4 basic parameters: continuous stroke scale, a functional ambulation category, walking speed, walking endurance. And you can see at the end of training, significant improvement at 3 months follow-up. Improvement. This is patient trained by conventional approaches, no machine being used. Then you see group 2, who are trained on the machine, only with treadmill training, no body support provided. Again, you can see scores all 4 parameters, significant p-values. Even at follow-up, they were able to maintain at 3 months this improvement. And when we saw the third group, who were given body weight support training, again you can see all 4 parameters, significant improvement both post-training as well as 3 months follow-up. They were able to retain the improvement in all 3 groups after 1 month intensive training. When we compared the groups at the end of training, all 3 groups, group 1, 2, 3, we couldn't find much difference. Even at follow-up, there was not much difference. So what we concluded, that chronic stroke survivors who were trained to walk with task-specific approach or treadmill training or with body weight support improved gait parameters. The training and the follow-up. Training with the body weight support offers some additional advantage over conventional therapy approaches, but not significant. This is our paper published. And now the Cochrane review says something similarly, that people after stroke who receive treadmill training with or without body weight support are not likely to improve the ability to walk independently as compared to those walking without treadmill training. But it can improve walking speed and walking endurance. So people who are able to walk will walk better with this system. Those who are not able to walk might not walk better. But remember, these are very controlled studies in mild to moderate stroke patients. In real life, we have treating moderate to severe stroke patients. For those patients, when nothing can make them walk, this machine system definitely has a role. So these trials only on mild to moderate strokes. They never take severe stroke patient these trials. So remember, moderate to severe strokes, this is a good system because no other thing can make them walk, give them steps. So it's a good system for moderate to severe stroke, not for mild to moderate strokes. Second is, I think you've got a balance system. There are multiple types of balance system available. The whole concept is called as force platform with visual feedback training. So the concept is you're standing on a platform which gives you multiple perturbations, and you can see your COG and skin in front of you. You had a harness also to make a person stand. Multiple systems are available. The advantage of system is that for this system, what you're saying, you can assess balance. There are 3 components of balance: visual, vestibular, and somatosensory. You can find out which balance which component person is lacking. That's one. You can assess balance, and you can train accordingly to compensate for the specific system. Suppose with a stroke, I don't have enough somatosensory input, but I can be trained to walk better by compensating with visual and vestibular stimuli. A very good system, very good thing to have in your unit, because many patients who are able to walk but can't walk better is mainly because of lack of balance and spasticity. So if you improve their balance, they can actually walk better in the community. Again, one of our studies from Niemann's days to measure the role of balance training, the same concept in chronic stroke survivors. These patients were supplemental stroke patients, more than 3 months follow-up, 3 months post-stroke duration, who were able to walk, FAC 224, who were able to walk with or without support. They were trained 20 sessions, 20 minutes per day, 5 days a week for 4 weeks. And what we saw, in this system, you can measure 2 things. One is called as the dynamic joint stability, which is called as the postural stability on stands. Second, we can say the swing concept. So a person will be able to stand, and the system sways, you are able to control your COG. That gives you an index. Second, you are making a person stand and you are swaying and asking him to do a task on the screen in front of you. That's your limit of stability. So the two components, you get a stance component, you get a sway or a swing component. So again, we have about 185 subjects. We did the criteria for about 40 subjects to ultimately come in. These are the age match parameters of this group. It's an open label study. What we saw, this is the initial, this is post training and 3 months follow. The work balance scale improved significantly, maintained at 3 months. The balance index, lower the better. So from that about 3.8, they come to about 2, significant change, able to maintain that follow-up. Limits of stability, higher the better, significant change post-training, able to maintain about half of that. Walking speed also improved, bath rate is also improved. The simple training on balance along with conventional therapy improved the balance parameters on the ground, on the machine, improved walking speed, as well as overall functional abilities. So force platform visual feedback training has a definite role in rehab and should be combined in the acute stage with bodyweight support system to get the stepping back, and the chronic stage with normal therapy to make a person walk in the community more independent in long term. Now we come to robotics. So something beyond a bodyweight support system, because you can't give steps on this system. And the therapist to put the foot forward when there's no power. But in robotics, it can give you automatic steps. There are 5 different concepts of role in robotics. There are ankle-based systems, stationary systems, overground systems, maybe using spinal cord injury, foot plate-based systems, geo systems, or the exoskeleton-based systems. This is the most popular one. Here, it's a body weight support system, same what you have, but a robot which can give you steps on a treadmill with a visual feedback. So any person, cervical C5 or a stroke GCS 8 with dense hemi, a TBI with tracheostomy, GCS 10, anybody can walk who can stand on a tilt table for 30 minutes with hemodynamic parameters. So this is how it works. So it's a bodyweight support system with a robot walking on a treadmill. Difference between an unweighing system and the robotics is the robotics will give you step with the help of this exoskeleton system. Versus an unweighing system, therapist has to put the foot forward and there is no power. So in this system, in one session, half an hour, a person can take 1,500 steps. About a kilometer he can walk. So in about a month, you can see how many steps they can take. That will trigger plasticity in the brain, get neural motor recovery. So these are not passive systems. You initially reduce the body weight, you reduce the body weight support, you reduce the robotic assistance, you increase the speed and gradually people will walk in the community. Remember, all these systems work in conjunction with conventional therapy because you get more plasticity, more motor recovery by these systems, but you learn to walk on the ground in therapy only. So robotics can never replace therapist and vice versa. Both things work in conjunction to improve patient outcome. And Cochrane review says that every 5th dependency in stroke could be avoided. 1 in 5 in stroke can walk. It's a very big thing. If you see IV TPA, 5% people come in time in first 5 hours. Here we can start in first few weeks. 1 in 5 stroke patients who couldn't have walked by any other means can be made to walk. And especially non-ambulatory stroke patients can benefit maximum with this type of training. So for upper limb, there are multiple systems available for robotics in the upper limb. There are exoskeleton-based systems where the whole arm moves, and end effector-based systems mainly for the distal part. You have only for wrist and hand. You have only for shoulder. You have sensor-based systems available now. This is the Armio system. So it's exoskeleton-based system, the visual feedback. Again, same concept. God has made hand to do a task, not to exercise. So a person is trying to reach a target on the computer, which is evident like driving a cup of tea. Whatever you can do, you do. What you can't do, robot will sense and complete the task. So it is not passive, it is active assistive training to generate new circuits and plasticity in the brain, getting better motor recovery. This is mainly used for proximal for the proximal weakness. There are multiple available now. And what the Cochrane review says is that it improves arm function in ADL scores as compared to conventional therapy. So it is good effect size. Then people who are able to walk and want to walk better. To analyze their gait, this is called as 3D instrumental gait analysis. I think we did a course in JIPMER about 5-6 years back, where you put LEDs sensors on the patient's body. These are infrared optical cameras. They have 4x10 we are here. Person being made to walk. Multiple trials will do. We analyze 4 components of gait: the kinematics, the kinetics, the EMG, and temporal parameters. For example, this guy had a stroke and he came with first follow-up walking with a stick. If you see, he can't bend his knee. He can't bend his knee. His ankle is not touching. There's no proper initial contact on the heel. The knee is not bending. So it is increased coupling of the spastic equinus gait with spasticity of ankle plantar flexors and the spasticity of rectus femoris. So we gave him botulinum toxin injection for rectus and gastrocnemius, and you can see he's bending nicely, and you can see his knee is bending nearly as normal as possible. The ankle is as neutral as possible. So this gait analysis system can help us to target our intervention. We can know what's wrong with person's walking. So we can target our intervention better. You can give plan botulinum toxin, you can plan the surgeries in CP children, you can test your orthotics, test your prosthetics. There's multiple implications now in rehab. Same with those who don't want to walk further better. They have distal weakness, or stroke patients mostly have a ankle DF weakness. This is called as FES system, an Ottstock foot drop stimulator. So what it does, the sensor in the heel, there's a small device which stimulates the peroneal nerve here. So as you're going to do a heel strike, this will sense, give a stimulus, give you ankle dorsiflexion. This can be used in therapy or can be used in everyday life. People can buy it, wear it inside your shoe. So it improves step length, improves stride length, also improves DF muscle strength and more normality of movement as per Cochrane review. It's a good thing to have in long-term care in these stroke survivors. EMG biofeedback, we don't use it much, but it's a very good system to target specific muscles. Mostly, in upper limb stroke, we don't have enough wrist and finger extensors, don't have enough ankle dorsiflexors, enough hamstring muscles. So if you give them a visual feedback to the patient with the help of an EMG, how much contraction you are generating with your effort, a visual feedback definitely helps to augment motor recovery. So if you use this type of treatment along with normal therapy, you have better motor power, better gait quality as compared to conventional therapy systems alone. These are all Cochrane reviews based trials. Then AFOs, we all know AFOs. These are polio days AFOs, with the conventional stirrups and conventional polio type AFO. Then we came these leaf spring AFOs. Then we have articulated AFOs. Now we have carbon-based AFOs. This is very lightweight, cost expensive, but very good system to walk in the community. And Cochrane review says that if people have weakness in ankle DF and have some weakness, AFOs improve walking speed, improve step and stride length, and better balance when a person is walking. So it has some role to play in long-term care of these stroke survivors. Virtual reality, very commonly used these days. People have Xbox in their house, they have Nintendo in their house. Just let them play. It's very cost-effective way at home-based therapy. They can play a tennis if they have upper limb weakness. They play a football when they have lower limb weakness. With virtual reality at home, it has significantly improved arm function in these stroke patients. Not grip and hand, but proximal arm function, better ADL training, ADL outcome with these patients on home-based training in virtual reality. Very good thing to have at home if you have a stroke. Circuit training, very common concept, especially in Europe, where they have community pools and community gyms. So all stroke survivors go at least thrice a week to the community pool for hydrotherapy or community gyms for a overall circuit training. They will do strengthening of all the muscle groups. They'll do for spine, for hip, for hamstrings, for calves. And if you do it regularly on those patients, your long-term stroke survivors could walk 10 meters distance. If they go for this type of training thrice a week, improves gait speed, step, length of stay, reduction. It's a very safe way in community to improve gait in these patients. Even it reduces the inpatient length of stay in those inpatient rehab also. So it works both in the acute stage and the long-term stage. Very cost-effective way to provide intensive strength training, which you normally miss in these stroke survivors. Then came very important concept of CIMT, also called as constraint induced movement therapy. It is used for upper limb. You constrain the normal limb, ask the person to use the involved upper limb at least 3 hours per day. You can do at home. The initial CIMT was for patients who have some finger extensors 10 degrees. Now there's got modified CIMT concepts. You can even use in patients who have no finger extensors. But remember, they can do it at home. They can do everyday tasks, cutting, eating, drinking, for at least 3 hours per day. An Excite trial has shown that it has shown significant changes in chronic stroke survivors with functional MRI studies to compensate for that. So it's a forced use paradigm, very cost effective, kept done at home. If they have some wrist or finger extension power, you can't do CIMT at legs because you walk with both the legs. But for upper limb, it is the most specific approach and most researched approach in literature and most cost effective approach. But very difficult to do because person do very frustrating to do it actually. But if you can do it 3 hours per day, good outcomes in long term. Then come mental practice. We all rehearse our talks before we are coming and giving our talk. Same way, if you practice mentally, what I'm supposed to do with my hand, with my leg when going for therapy. If you keep it in mind, keep on practicing even in the mind, for doing a task, it improves upper limb function. Limited evidence, but there is some role of mental practice in improving upper limb function in stroke survivors. Mirror therapy. We have forgotten mirror therapy. It can be used for distal extremity, for lower limb, for upper limb. Can be used for both. Very good for neglect, especially visual patient neglect. Very good improvement. Upper limb CRPS, very good improvement. Why is something called as mirror neurons in our brain? So you are taking a mirror box, keeping the inward extremity inside, normal extremity outside, and moving it, you think you're normal. When you're moving a normal limb, you think your weaker limb is also moving normal. It triggers mirror neurons in the brain. Very good motor function and ADL improvement, especially in upper limb. Very good cost-effective adjunct to conventional rehab, can be used at home along with CIMT, especially for upper limb recovery in these patients. Then something called as bilateral arm training. Same, we have mirror neurons. People say move both the arms together. CIMT only involves doing the weaker arm. This says use both the arms together. There are games available for that. There are machines available for that. Again, they work on similar mirror neurons in the brain to trigger neuroplasticity. Again, mainly used for upper limb rehab, not for lower limb. You already work with both the lower limbs. Again, used for upper limb rehab. Some evidence coming in now, bilateral arm training also. So remember, if we use these intensive training protocols, you can see the supplementary motor area lighting up in the brain week by week, lead to better excitability and better walking pattern in long term. We also published long back, we took chronic stroke survivors, those who were more than 6 months post-stroke up to 10 years post-stroke. Again, there were Nimitz type paper, but they were trained for 5 days a week for 4 weeks. These were chronic stroke patients. Half of them were non-ambulatory. Half were able to walk with one-person assistance. If you reduce their spasticity with medication with botulinum toxin, give them a splint, and train them for a month in intensive training protocol, 3 hours per day, what you can see, they're able to walk better. And even at 3 months, they're able to maintain their mobility. We give them a home program. Why? Because in strokes, especially MCS strokes, people have power in the lower limb. They have hip flexors, they have quadriceps, they have hip extensors. They don't get rehab basically. So they are treated at the center, they are sent home and do home-based therapy. they never get a proper 6 weeks of rehab. So even patients in chronic stroke survivors who are not gotten rehab, even 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, if you reduce their spasticity, give them training, give them orthosis, 1/3 can still learn to walk. And those who are able to walk with 1 or 2% support can walk with a stick. This is functional recovery. You will not change their impairment parameters. Their motor power will not change. Their spasticity will come down. They get a sensory feedback, and they learn to get steps on the machine. They're able to walk in the community. So don't lose hope. Walking is still an achievable goal in long term in stroke survivors. So remember, we all know this. We can reperfuse the brain in first 4 hours. We all know that. We can do a IVTP or clot retrieval. The swelling starts coming down in first few days, in first few weeks. Brain tries to change itself. That dies by 3 months. That's why we say 3 months is the cutoff time for recovery in stroke patients. This is not true. If you start intensive training paradigms in the first few weeks, you get something new, which is called as training induced reorganization, which you are not aware of us till the last decade. So if you start intensive training protocols here, you can get new recovery which you never thought was possible. Just see few cases. This lady has a postpartum ischemic cardiomyopathy, bad MCS stroke, EF was 15%. She was told, don't go anywhere, just lie in bed. You will die otherwise. She came to us about 6 weeks, spent in the hospital 3 months with us. This is a functional MRI study at about 6 months. If you see, with intensive training, we were able to stimulate supplementary motor areas to recover function. Hand is still weaker, but she is independent, takes care of her child, underwent a heart transplant after 2 years. She's so good now, so fit now. Another guy, bad Apla syndrome, nothing in the left brain actually available. Came at about 6 weeks, spent many months in the hospital and the outpatient. He now drives his own car. He works, his architect works independently. Still nothing here. Luckily, he was left hand dominant. So his cognition and speech language was spared and he got his mobility back. Another guy, bad ICS stenosis, nothing in the left brain again. Global ICA infarct. He came at 4 weeks on a ventilator. He had discharged at 3.5 months. Now at about 5 years now, he actually joined his college back with his graduation. Still has some anomic aphasia, still has some hand weakness, but he's able to learn. Another guy, bad left involvement here. You see here, the FDG PET scan of a brain. There's nothing, no activation in the left brain. Still, this is at discharge. Now at 4-5 years, he still has aphasia, but he walks independently with the help of just someone holding his back. And still you will see a FDG PET scan not so very improved. So opposite brain also helps somehow to improve the outcomes. So we can summarize by saying that the rehab, what we learned 20 years back, was just compensatory management. You can't walk, give a stick, can't see, teach braille, whatever. We never target the impairment. And that led to further learn non-use. So whatever ability they have, they were not even asked to use that. So the current rehab is to target the impairment. You work on motor power, you work on language, you work on speech, you work on cognition, work on behavior, work on bladder. All components can be improved if you have an impairment-based approach. And these new technologies, what you're acquiring, have a good adjunct to conventional rehab to improve the outcome of your stroke patients. So we can say that advances in recovery and plasticity have shown that task-specific activity results in changes in the nervous system that have better motor behavior. So you are doing a training, you're seeing an fMRI, seeing the outcome. So these systems have a role to play, but remember, they will only help if it is used in conjunction with conventional therapy. They can't replace therapists can't replace machines. Both go hand in hand for better outcome. Thank you very much.
Talk. I thoroughly enjoyed your talk. Touched upon all the aspects, how exactly the service level itself. You can't hear?
Now it's better.
Can you?
Yes.
I think we should Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Am I
now it's
audible?
better. Now it's better.
All right, okay. We thoroughly enjoyed your talk. From your vast experience and the depth of learning into the process of neuro rehabilitation throughout your PhD and subsequent continued clinical practice and practice in the laboratory and the therapy stations are very well brightly coming out in the talk. So this was very illuminating. I just also read recently that in one of the Cochrane reviews, an additional point which they have emphasized, I think 19 out of 17 you showed the last Cochrane review. I think 19, another one has come, where more or less the same structure, but they added a sentence stating that the all the protocol parameters have to be researched, and there seems to be from various smaller studies definite trend towards the ability to towards our ability to improve the outcomes by further fine tuning and refining the protocols. So continued attempts, continued clinical trial studies are needed with the newer paradigms, newer protocols, and this is an area which is they are emphasizing in the latest Cochrane review. The 2019 Cochrane review adds on to the
Yes. Yeah.
stating that from the smaller trials which are continuing to accumulate, there is a clear need for further larger trials with to exploring newer paradigms, newer protocols with changed parameters, which we have to build on based upon the existing evidence. And this is something which all of us who use these equipment should be continuing to strive to do. So
Yeah, you are right. Because see, all these studies which were taken part in the Cochrane review were done on mild to moderate strokes. So you don't need machines for mild to moderate stroke. You need machine for moderate to severe stroke. That's one. Second, all these studies were of very short duration. And third, most of them were done in chronic strokes. So very few studies have taken appropriate patients whom these machines are designed for actually. So if you take proper subacute patients who have moderate to severe strokes, you can't make them walk by any other means. So for those subset of patients, this is a very good thing to have in the ambulatory. And same way, those who are able to walk and want to walk better, you can't change their motor power beyond the point. You can only change their balance. If their balance is better, they can walk better. So we have invested very nicely into very cost-effective systems, which will help you in long term the outcome of your patient.
This is the time for anybody in the audience to ask any questions. We have a question from Dr. Rajeshri, who is Assistant Professor of Department of Neurology.
My question is regarding patients who have chronic stroke survivors, who have residual disability, like the video of the patient you showed, whom you did gait analysis and subsequently used botulinum toxin and other approaches. So can you just give us a summary of how you would approach such a patient? Say 6 months after stroke, this is the kind of patient we routinely see in our OPD. So what can we do for them?
So most common patterns, there are basically 4 types of gait patterns after stroke. And the most common pattern is a spastic equinus stiff knee gait pattern. The most commonly you will see, you will do an initial contact in the forefoot, or you will bend the knee, and you will require a stick. Typical you will see this type of stroke patient are in outpatient. So remember, they will have power in hip flexors and knee extensors. They will have power in hip extensors. They will have weaker hamstrings, a weaker ankle TA. That's one. They will have a spastic ankle transflexor and spastic rectus. Do 3 tests for them, clinical test. One is called a silver scale test. Should look for which muscle is stiff, gastrocnemius, soleus, or both. One. Second, do a prone rectus test. Make a person lie prone on their stomach. Look at the ASIS to touch the level. Bend the knee. If the hip goes up, it means rectus femoris is tight. Look for these 2 specific tests and then decide how bad is this spasticity. If rectus spasticity is more than 2, they will require botulinum toxin. If power is more than 3 plus. If not, if it is less, spasticity is less than 1 to 1 plus, give a small dose of baclofen. 1. Second, give them an AFO. Third, start specific infection stop therapy. We have to stretch the gastrocnemius and rectus, teach family how to do it. You facilitate ankle dorsiflexors and hamstring. And third, strengthen the proximal muscles of hip flexors, glutei. So all 3 are required. What is weak need to be assisted. What is stiff need to be stretched. What is anti-gravity need to be strengthened. And add a low dose of baclofen if it is less than 2. If it is more, botulinum toxin or a phenol block you're comfortable with, give them a proper air. To do all these 3 things, you can remove stick in many of the patients. And now if you have a balance system with you, train them for proper balance. The most common issue, they don't spend enough time on the stencil when they're walking. So the balance still impaired. So do these 3 things, give them balance training, you can remove stick in many of the patients.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask that what are the non-stroke indications for this system? Are they helpful in neuromuscular disorders or in cerebral disorders also?
What are the long-term?
Non-stroke.
Non-stroke indications. Okay.
Especially cerebral neuromuscular disorders.
Yeah.
Are they
yeah. So if you see there, 3 types of disorders: cerebral, extrapyramidal, reflexive disorders. Broadly, if you see. So there are a lot of papers on improving gait and balance in Parkinson's disease, in cerebral ataxia. There are RCTs available. If you treat a Parkinson's in a PSP patient on this treatment training and body weight support, you can maintain mobility for longer period of time. Second, those with cerebral ataxia, the support required to walk is much less those who are trained in body weight support. So it has good role to play in Parkinson's, PSP group of patients, good role to play in ataxia. In incomplete spinal cord injury, very good role to play. Because they have the ability to improve their power, they can get their recovery faster and start walking earlier. And then TBI, same like stroke. Your TBI patients, the same like stroke, one-sided involvement. You start walking training very, very early in pain education. Good work in Parkinson's disorders, good work in TBI, SCI, good role in attack, other than stroke.
And neuromuscular disorders, sir?
If you have an element weakness primarily, if you strain the muscle more, it's not good. So in muscular dystrophy, in ALS, in the initial stage, it can be used because it also gives you endurance training. When you are walking, you are getting 2 things. You're getting a walking training, also getting a cardiac endurance training. That's a good way to improve endurance. A lot of work now on these systems, especially in Switzerland. Every day have centers for these machines. So geriatric population who can't walk that much in community, they come thrice a week, walk for a kilometer in half an hour. So it helps to improve endurance in long-term patients with ALS, muscular dystrophies, or geriatric population person.
There was a recent study in which I read said that very intensive delay rehabilitation is actually detrimental to the patient.
Yeah, it's an AWARD trial. It's an AWARD trial. So AWARD trial, what it does, it had two groups. On day one, what we were doing post-stroke. So it was very early mobilization. So there are two groups. In group one, patients were made not to sit. In group two, they were made to sit and do some exercise. That's all. So there was more mortality in the very early mobilization group in our trial, which is only for first 24 to 48 hours. That's all. Again, our trial is now being done on our two study, where they do a much more wider scale. The results say it is not that detrimental. But remember, the person is not fit on day one. You don't do too much on day one. That's all. It is not for intensive training in long term. Only for first 24 hours that trial is happening.
Professor Gopalakrishnan from neurosurgeon questions.
Yeah, I was asking. Hi, Abhishek.
Hi,
for such a long time.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you.
Very easy to understand, but sometimes we forget what so much is there to be done after an event. So my question is, how quick can a patient enter into a rehab program? Is there a time limit beyond which he will not benefit? That the rewiring has occurred and then there is nothing much you can do, or is it like that at any point in time you can come back to a program if he did not have? Yeah,
it depends which impairment you're looking for. Looking for motor impairment only right now, for example, motor power will not change beyond 6 to 8. So whichever muscles start firing, talking only about strokes right now, muscles start firing in first 6 months, can improve in next 6 months. The muscle they don't fire in for 6 months will never going to fire. That's number one. Second is functional training, which means people have some power, but because of spasticity and lack of balance, they can't use that power. So like we published a paper in chronic stroke patients, more than 2 years, 3 years also, who were not trained, can be trained to walk. Someone who's on regular rehab for 6 months, not improving, will not change much. So the muscle which fires to 6 months can fire afterwards also, can increase the power of that. But suppose the next exercise is 0 at 6 months, will remain 0 for life. So we should target specifically what we are looking for. Versus for cognition, for speech, for language, there's no time limits. They start recovering later, the graph goes, so motor will come like this and dies down, but cognition, speech, language still goes up. Even the impairment improves up to years.
The question is, stroke is a problem of the 65 plus, possibly in our country, it's going that way. How much will these rehabilitation methods work for them?
So age is not a criteria. Age is a criteria for neuroplasticity primarily. There's some, if you are an older child, you have less plasticity in older age. But the only way to improve outcome, be it 20 years or 65 years of age, is therapy. There's no medication to get the movement back. So the only available resource to improve outcome in these patients is therapy. You can augment therapy with help of machine. So the only way to improve outcome is therapy. You have to do therapy. And remember, in typical MCS stroke, 1/3 are severe strokes, which will never going to walk. 1/3 are very mild strokes, which will walk. The other 1/3, which are moderate to severe, need intensive rehab. They will not walk without intensive training. So for them, age doesn't matter. The only way to improve outcome is therapy. And these machines will help you to give those number of steps in non-ambulatory patients, those who are not walking, and the balance system will help to improve the walking patients who are able to walk but need walking. So both work at a different time in the life of a stroke.
Yeah, I understand. See, when you have a young boy, a young girl, a young lady, whatever it be,
yeah,
they have that constant mental determination and mind power to get back to normalcy. Whereas in the elderly, we find generally they give in to it and decide, well, motivation is not that. Mind power is no more there to get back to normalcy.
Yes.
What is your take on that?
Yeah, so motivation is the first thing which is required. Without, if you don't have motivation to improve, you don't want to improve. That's the first thing. And second, 1/3 of stroke survivors in acute, subacute, and chronic stage have depression. There are two things. One is inherent motivation. It is called as resilience now in these days in the medical literature. If you have resilience and if you have motivation, you will improve. If you don't have motivation, you don't want to walk, nothing is going to make you walk. And second important component is if we identify and treat depression in these patients, the outcome is much better. So both things are required, motivation to learn a skill, and second, keep it of depression. If you do both, you can learn to walk. If you don't want to learn to walk, nothing going to help you.
Thank you. Very nice. What you are doing is again congratulations.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi,
Good morning.
Hi, Naveen. Hi.
So that was a very nice presentation. Thank you. I have two questions to you. One thing is, have you had recently COVID time any patient with COVID, having COVID with stroke? And second question is, does COVID increase the chances of having stroke?
Yeah, both things are there. So COVID will lead to more strokes. That's one. In a Bombay study published today only, the average incidence was 1 to 1.5%. Now it is 5% in COVID times. So COVID significantly improves stroke, increased number of strokes, that's true. And second, the COVID strokes behave similarly as non-COVID strokes. We have managed about at least 30 strokes in the last 5 months who had COVID positivity.
Does it affect rehabilitation?
So it depends how long they were in the ICU. So those who were ventilator dependent took longer time to recover after the stroke. But those who are done by ventilation behave similarly as non-COVID strokes. So if you have bad COVID along with a stroke, you are venting for a long period of time, you will have longer time to recover. But if you have milder COVID, you don't need to be in the ICU for long. They behave similarly as non-COVID strokes.
Thank you.
Dr. Abhishek, I know that you are very busy. You marvelously combine both practice. DK, anything else? Shall I wind up? We all enjoyed this talk, and I think I made a correct choice of combining your talk with today's inauguration of our two equipments, both this treadmill as well as the balance trainer. So as we start working on this very actively, we would continue to be under your guidance. We'll be seeking your help, and at some point when when the reopening becomes more intensive and we are able to move around, some point we would like you also to visit the department and see the facilities and go through our protocols, and we can think together how we can modify the existing protocols and try to design some good studies to develop good, effective and more effective protocols. So we will be under your guidance, and this was a very exciting session. We enjoyed it, and we also benefited from the rich practical experience you are having from seeing a lot of patients. And at some point, I would also like to, I've been postponing this. Last time we just missed out. There was an arrangement to visit the center, but then we got too busy with something else, some other business meeting and all. So next week, please kindly help arrange for us to visit your center as well, to see all the good work that's going on. So I thank you very much for once again, and we'll let you go back to your very active schedule of the day.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Narayan, for the kind invitation. Always good to be there with old friends. Thank you. Thank you very much.